Hello, 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 hello. So I am super excited because today I'm going to be interviewing one of my amazing friends. On it, guys, seriously,
So
she
sweet.
is, she is one of the sweetest people.
You're so
I
sweet.
know.
Thank you.
It's like she is, and her like joy and kindness is so infectious. Don't start crying. We
Well, I don't. It's your fault. Jeez.
Already
Already.
started. You're like,
It's your fault.
go.
Just won't
We're
look at
just
you the whole interview.
this is the hello portion, Nicole. Like we can't, you can't have teardrops. But this is one of my amazing friends. Her name's Nicole, and I'm excited to just hear her share her story today. Do you want to just kind of share a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
before we get-
First of all, I just think it's so great that you're doing this. I think that it's such a good platform and reason to do because I think sometimes moms don't get to talk about enough of their stuff. So I think it's great that you're doing this. So like Ruby said, my name is Nicole Amen. I have been married for 6 years, I think. Yeah. I think, I don't know. Once you have a baby, you forget like that stuff's not, you check the baby milestones, you and your husband are kind of like, so 6 years, but I've been with my husband for 10. So we've been, that's kind of what we keep track of longer anyways, is how long we've been stuck together. And so then I had my son, Kason, in March in 2020. I am a work from home mom. My husband is a mining engineer here in Elko, which I know you relate to. And so, yeah, so we met through church. We've been going to Living Stones Church since we moved here about 6-7 years ago. So yeah, so just kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. All right. So you said your son was born in March 2020. So that just to kind of give folks a context of things, because we're going to be talking about pregnancy and postpartum during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But first, so how long were you married before you had Kason?
We were married, I think, about 4 years before we started trying. It took us about 6 months to conceive Kason. And then, so we celebrated our third anniversary, I can't remember, fourth, fifth anniversary. Like I said, it all kind of jumbles together. Right. And that time was really jumbled together. So he was born in March, our anniversary is April. So we were married probably about 3-ish years when he came in. Okay. He just kind of messed on everything up in the best way possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I guess a question I have too is, how did you know you were ready?
I think it is kind of the same feeling as knowing you're ready to get married. Because I don't think anybody ever says, you're ready. It's kind of the same thing. I always kind of think about what our pastors say at church. Like there's no checklist to be doing things. There's no checklist for being ready to get married, being ready to go to school or even change a job. You know what I mean? You just kind of know. My husband and I always joke, you just kind of feel it in your Holy Spirit muscle. Like you just know, you just feel like you're ready. It took a lot of prayer from both my husband and I. I was ready before my husband was, but he was so wanting to be a good dad. Like he just so desperately wanted to be a good dad. He had a harder childhood than some. And so he was just really, really wanting to make sure that he could do everything possible to be the best dad he could. So one of the things that he did to help him know he was ready, because I knew I was ready for a long time. When you're kindergarten, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was like ballerina, babysitter, mom. And I was like, check, just got to do the last one. So I knew I wanted to be a mom for forever. It's what I went to school for, was kids. I did, Living Stones kids for a while. I was the babysitter for all the pastors' kids. I worked as a nanny. I was I worked at the same daycare for 5 years in college, so I've been around kids for forever. So I always joke, I was ready to not have to give the kid back. Like I wanted to keep it. Like this one's mine. I don't want to give it back anymore.
Yeah.
But I knew I was ready. But after, when we started talking about it, we wanted to be in a house, first of all. But we also, it was something that my husband, Kyle, had to kind of work through. And so he sought help from our pastors who had kids and kind of just said, how do you know you're ready? Like, I don't want to mess this up. You know what I mean? And so, and it took a lot of encouragement from me, and some nice, some not so nice, but it was just a loving kind of kick in the butt. Like, you have questions about this, go ask people who have done it. You know what I mean? And so after he talked about it, then he felt a little bit better and he felt ready. But I think it was just something, I know it sounds so cheesy, but it's kind of like the same thing. How do you know he's the one? How do you know, you know what I mean? How do you know this is the house? Like, you just feel it. And if you're not in a place of that, then there's then that's okay to do that. But I think you just feel that you're ready, I think. And I think the biggest thing that I can say is both my husband and I both being on the same page was something that was really what helped us go, okay, now we're ready because we're on the same page.
No, that's true, because I can't relate to that, because I know, like, when we got married, we were super excited prior to getting married, and then we got married and we're like, maybe we should wait like a year or something. But I feel like I was more of like every couple months, can we do it now? Come on now. And with my husband, it was a little slower. He was excited too, but he just was like not as motivated as I was to get started. And it's like when we finally said, okay, it's like, you know what? I am ready and stuff like that. And so it was like, so I understand that. And so you just kind of have to go for it sometimes, you know? And I think you said a key thing too, though, is like, first you wanted a house. So I think have like practical goals as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. He was going in a transition between work jobs. So that was one big thing for him. I was changing jobs as well. And so that was one thing we wanted to do. And we knew, you know, I'm a very sentimental person. And so I knew having a home where we could have those memories. And, you know, we were just talking about this before we went live, but like no one had lived in our house. You know, our backyard was only ever our backyard. And so that was something that was important for me and my husband. It might not necessarily be important for anybody else, and that's okay. But it's the things that I wanted for my kids. This is kind of what I wanted. So we needed to be in the place to make those things happen before we started to try. And one of the things too, I think that was one of the really big times that I leaned heavily on Jesus was praying for a baby. That was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, because up until that point I hadn't prayed. So the answer couldn't be no, but I knew if I prayed, the answer could be yes or no. So if I just kind of didn't pray, it was still just kind of out there. And I grew up, not being able to like ask for things. You know, the rule was if you go to the grocery store and you ask for a candy bar, the answer is automatically no. So my brain was wired that you don't ask because the answer is no. So then trying to go to God, ask for a baby, my immediate thought was the answer was going to be like, nope, nice try. So I had to really rewire my brain to be like, it's okay to ask God for things. And so I literally, this is so embarrassing, literally, of course, because, you know, it always happens, went to church, and it was a Sunday that my husband was working. So I went to church and had to run some groceries or run some errands and get groceries later. And so the sermon, of course, was on asking God, because he knows what you want, of course, you know, because God's just, I told the pastors later, I was like, just say my name next time. It's a lot of, just shine the spotlight on me. It's way easier.
All up in my business.
Seriously. And the pastors had no idea I was going through this, of course. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I am driving to the grocery store after church, and I just finally let it all out. And I finally just started praying to God. And I was like, please, like, I want this so bad. Like, I really want this, but I don't know how my husband feels. I don't even know if this is what you want or any, like, I was just, please, please, please. And I had a meltdown in the Walmart parking lot so bad they sent security out to check if I was okay, Ruby. No, I'm not even kidding. Like, and it wasn't like I was like having a fit. I was just crying so hard because it was something I wanted so bad. I was so scared. Literally, Walmart security called on me.
I'm sorry for laughing.
No, it's hysterical. No, it's hysterical. I was so ridiculous because it was just so important to me. And it was that night that happened. And then literally the next Sunday, my husband came to me and said, okay, I'm ready to start trying. And yet I still have a hard time asking God for things. It's so weird, but literally, so it was huge for me going, okay, like I really need to ask. But yeah, the journey to even getting to the point of being ready, it is a long thing. So if anybody watching is feeling like I'm not sure if I'm ready, or I don't feel ready, or I'm in the process of that, like, take comfort in the fact is like no one's journey is the exact same. It's the same thing of like, finding what you're meant to do with your life, or finding your significant other, or, meeting Jesus. I mean, everybody's journey is so different. And that's what makes all of us so different, And I didn't know at the time why it was so hard for me to ask, you know what I mean? But now that I have my own kid, I let him ask all the questions he wants. And I had no idea that was the lesson that I was learning, so that 4 years later I could share with my son. But now I know that's the lesson I was learning, it's okay to ask for things. And now I let my son ask for everything. But in the midst of it, it's so hard. It's so hard. So powerful. So the journey to even getting to be okay to start trying was like a whole other thing. So it was a journey, to say the least.
No, I thank you for sharing that. And so now moving forward, you and your husband, you came to conclusion that yes, we're ready and all that stuff. And you said you conceived. It's about 6 months of trying and stuff like that. Describe with us, how did you find out you're pregnant?
Oh my gosh, so funny. So we're doing the test every single month and stuff, and so we are getting ready, and so I do Pampered Chef, and so it was Pampered Chef National Conference, and so because the flights out of Elko are like $400, we were driving me to Reno. My husband was dropping me off at Reno so then I could catch a flight to Vegas and fly with my whole team. So we're driving to Reno, and I'm like, I'm late. Like, oh, that's weird. And so I was like, but I'm not getting hopeful because it's month 6. So I'm like, okay, I'm not like trying not to get, trying not to get hopeful, but like kind of maybe.
I remember that.
Like that in between, like I don't want to get my
I don't care, but
I do care. Yeah, that. So that's the mentality I was in. And so we went to Reno for school, for pictures at this college, because that's where we went to school. That's where we met. My husband proposed on the quad at school. Yeah. And so we always go back and see where he proposed and take a picture. So it's kind of fun. And so I was still late. And so then I get to Vegas. Now my mom has no idea, because if I tell my mom, then she's going to like freak out. And I'm like, my mom didn't even know we were trying. Cause I was like, if I tell her, she's going to freak out. So I was like, but keeping that to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, inside I was like hyperventilating with a paper bag. I was like freaking out. So we go to Chicago. I don't remember a single thing I learned at conference because I could not focus on anything else. I couldn't focus on anything. And so I had just promoted within Pampered Chef. And so I was getting ready, getting really dressed up to walk across stage, have my name up there, all that kind of stuff. And so my mom was getting ready because she had promoted too. And so we were getting ready. And so in between classes, like lectures, we had like 20 minutes, but we're in Chicago. So we don't have a car, and we're in like the business section of Chicago. So it's not like there's like gas stations on the corner. So one of my really close Pampered Chef friends, she knew, and I told her, and I said, okay, we have to go to the store, like go to Walgreens or something and get a pregnancy test, because I'm losing my mind. Like I can't
Did
focus.
You just feel that something was different this time
Well,
around?
It was not really that I felt anything different. It was just the fact that I was late, and I was so late, and I was still late. But then I was like, I'm traveling, and we all know how that messes things up. And then I was excited because I was staying up late with my friends, and then I was, in another, city. And so the reason why we had to test that day is because that night we had a celebration party. And so we got 2 free drink tickets. And I was like, well, if I think just I am, I can't willingly, you know what I mean? So I was like, I just have to check. So in 20 minutes, in between the last lecture, in between when I'm like walking across stage of like 30,000 people, my friend and I get in an Uber, we like hightail it across Chicago to get a pregnancy test, go back to the hotel, because the hotel in the convention center where everybody was gathered was like right across the street. So she drops us off. We race upstairs. I call my husband on the phone and I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I literally can't focus. You have to take this test with me. Like, I'm so freaked out and panicked. I can't even absorb what I'm learning. I can't even be present because I'm so freaked out. So get on the phone. it comes up positive. I start shaking and I'm crying, and then he's happy, and he'll tell you he didn't cry. He's lying. He totally cried, but he's at work at his desk. So he's like, I love you too. I gotta go. So then I come out, and my friend and we celebrate. And so then what I wanted to do, because I knew that I had to tell my mom. So what I wanted to do is downstairs, they had like a kind of like Pampered Chef, like swag merchandise store. And they had a future Pampered Chef and a like taste tester onesie. Yeah. And so I went and bought it for my mom, put it in a bag with the test, and gave it to my mom before we walked across stage. And she just like melted the pictures. She hates the pictures, but I love it because I had to tell her, because I was like, I can't not tell her. Yeah. And I'm with now, and you got to keep in mind, my mom's a Pampered Chef for 25 years. Okay. So I have grown up with all of her friends. So all of her friends,
you're their daughter.
Yeah, 100%. So if I start going, no, I don't want my drink tokens, all like 10 of them are going to be like, like they're not dumb. Right. So I told my mom, well, now I got to tell all the rest of them. And so they all know. So yeah, so I found out at Chicago at conference.
You did a lot in 20 minutes.
I did.
Can we talk about
it was exhausting. It was exhausting. And so we're getting ready to go to conference now. And so now it's a running joke. Everybody's like, what do we need to bring? We'll bring highlighters, we'll bring this. And my one friend, Denise, she's like, I'll bring the pregnancy test. I'm like, gosh. So now it's just like an inside joke.
That's so
But yeah, so it was stressful to say the least. Yeah. Like it was so happy. It was so perfect. I was so happy. I had a baby. I didn't really even care how I found out, honestly, but it was just, it was a mess. But I mean, that's what it was supposed to be. So
that was also the time that you made director. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I made director for Pampered Chef. Yeah. So that's when I made director, and I got to walk across stage. And so it was so fun. Like
celebrating two major things.
Yeah, it was huge. So I like got to walk across stage, and it was so funny. So as I mentioned, when we were in Reno before I even got to Chicago and stuff, so that bench where we take pictures and stuff. Yeah. So we took pictures there when we were dating. That's where we took pictures when he proposed. Yeah. Then we took pictures when we were our engagement pictures. Yeah. At the end of our wedding, we left the wedding early, snuck onto campus in my wedding gown and everything, took pictures there. And then we took a picture of us on the bench. I'm pregnant, but had no idea. So we have that picture there too. And then that's the same bench how we announced that we were pregnant. And so then we have pictures there. I have a picture of me. Then you can tell I'm pregnant. We have a picture. And then I have a picture of the three of us, my husband, Kason, and I at the bench too. So it's just kind of like our bench. So
and watch Kason go to UNLV just to annoy you. I was kidding.
Wherever he wants to go, I will support him wherever he wants to go. Wherever he wants to go, I will support him. He's my kid.
I know. I love it.
It is what it is.
That's so cool. I love that story. That's an adventurous way.
It was chaotic. It was chaotic. It was chaotic. It was. Yeah. I look back and I go,
a lot.
There's like no even words that I can describe. It was just, it's what it was.
I love that. So after you found out, do you remember how far along you were when you found out? Maybe like 5 to 6 weeks, because you said
I was so let's see. I was probably like 7-ish weeks, 6 or 7-ish weeks, because we conceived him the beginning of June. And so yeah, it was the beginning of June, and then it was like mid-July every year when we go to conference. It was probably about like 6, 7-ish weeks, I want to say, somewhere around there. Okay.
So did you already have like an OBGYN, or did you have to look for one? And like, what did you consider when you were looking for an OBGYN?
So we, I don't think we had an OBGYN. I don't think so. And so what I really wanted in an OBGYN was someone that was going to view me as Nicole, not just a patient number. That was my main thing. I didn't care how long they'd been in practice. I didn't care how many babies they delivered. I didn't care of course I wanted their practices to align with mine, you know what I mean? But unless you're few and far between, 99% of the time, the practices that you want align. I wanted somebody that was just going to say, what do you want? Let's try to make that happen in the best possible way for the safety of you and your baby. Right. And so when we found our OBGYN, I was really happy because it was a husband and wife team.
Oh, nice.
And so the husband was very like calm and relaxed and made me feel very like easygoing. Like he was like a deep breath alive. Like he was just so calming, and he made me feel so relaxed and comfortable and just at peace with everything. And his wife was polar opposite. She was like, rah, rah, let's go, girl. Like so ready to go. And so it was the perfect combination for me of like, let's be calmly motivated. And it was like the perfect, and it was so funny because I'm very much like her and my husband's very much like him.
I was thinking that while you're talking.
Yeah. And so it was nice because it was the perfect thing of like, I could be calm, but still be like determined and motivated to get through it at the same time. So that was, it was good. I really, really liked that. I'm so sad that they moved because
they were local and then
they were local and then we moved. Yeah. We did not want to travel anywhere else outside of Elko for a baby because the last 3 months of my pregnancy, my husband was going to be doing underground rotating shifts. So days, nights, whatever. We didn't know what was happening. Granted, we also didn't know COVID was coming, but we didn't know. Nobody knew that was coming. But I didn't want to be like in labor, him be underground, not be able to reach him be 2 hours away and me be having a baby on the floor, by myself. And then us still have to drive 3 hours away to the hospital. You know what I mean? It just, I didn't feel calm about that. You know what I mean? And so, when we went to look for doctors, we wanted to stay local, and we went through such a journey figuring out if we were going to stay in Elko, if we were going to move, and God just so completely lovingly kicked us in the butt and said, you need to stay in Elko. We just felt like we want to have our babies in Elko. And so, so it was a journey to find one, but like I said, I think the biggest thing with finding an OBGYN is finding somebody that makes you feel comfortable and confident. Those are the two biggest things. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. Like, because for me, like as a Black woman, when I was reading maternal mortality rates, it's so high for Black women in the United States. And so it's like, to me, I was like, I kind of the same where I'm like, I wanted that doctor with a humanity.
Absolutely.
That would
That's
see
perfect,
me.
the humanity.
You know what I mean? So I could totally understand what you were saying. I'm like, it's not someone who's just like, oh, hon, you're fine. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, no, I'm in pain. Like, acknowledge my pain. Just say, oh, it's not, I'm overthinking it. Because I've seen so many stats and heard so many stories and stuff. So I applaud you and I agree with you on that for sure.
I think it also helped too because my doctor, because they were husband and wife, they had just had a baby like 6 months ago.
Wow.
So it was like all fresh. They knew everything I was going through.
Relatable.
Yeah. So they were relatable in a big way to like what I was going through and how I was feeling and stuff like that. But in the same time, the husband was also great for my husband because he said, here's like, we would leave an appointment and they'd be like, here's what you can do as the pregnant mom, but here's what you can do to support your pregnant mom and prepare as a dad who's having a baby. So it was really good. So I love it. I'm so sad they moved. I'm so sad they moved. And it's not like they moved close. They moved to like Oklahoma or Ohio or something. So I'm like, I'm not driving that far for a baby.
No.
Not doing that.
That's funny. Well, before I move into the next thing, I just want to say thank you so much, Salon Titi, for the comment. And thanks for watching so far. If you have any questions for Nicole while we're talking, please feel free to comment on that. So next, what were your pregnancy symptoms?
I honestly didn't have any traditional symptoms. Like I was, and I don't say this gloating because I know your story. I didn't have any.
I know the answer to that, but I wanted to share that because I want women to know that it's okay to have like a good pregnancy.
Yeah, I had a great pregnancy.
Yeah,
I had no morning sickness. I had no uncomfortableness really. The biggest thing for me was the fatigue. I was exhausted.
The entire time, or was it like a particular trimester?
Okay. The entire time. I felt like I had just pulled an all-nighter every single day I woke up. Like, cramming for finals in college. That's how, like living on Red Bulls, that's how I felt every single day. So I was just exhausted. That was the biggest thing. So I just had to kind of decompartmentalize my brain and just say like, okay, now is time that I'm taking care of me. And now is time that I'm taking care of, the house or work or whatever it was. But yeah, the fatigue was the hardest part. The only other thing it was more just uncomfortable is I had pain at the top of my, stomach, and it's because my muscles and my abs, they were stretching so much. So I had pain here. So I literally just took like the massage gun thing and I would just hold it right here. It would just be right here. And it would just massage my stomach. And because it wasn't like my stomach, it wasn't like lower down by my pelvis. It was literally the top of my.
That's a nice hack.
And it was so bad. And I literally would just sit and watch TV and just hold the massage gun right on my stomach right here. And my husband come home and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "My stomach hurts."
That's a nice hack. I have definitely never heard that.
Yeah, because obviously I didn't want to do it like on my son in the room, but like the muscle, it hurt so bad. And so it was just, I just needed to, because it was just stretching. And he was big too, because my uterus was a little forward in my body. And so I had you remember my bump was huge and he was ginormous. And so my stomach was just like, we can't stretch that fast. Like it was just stretching too fast and my muscles were like, slow down. And so that's just what I did was I just took the massage and that's just what I did all the time. And that was the part, like, my feet didn't get real big till the very last 2 weeks.
See, that was me as well. Yeah. It was because every time I was like, your feet look normal. And then all of a sudden the same.
Oh, it was like overnight. I woke up and I was like, oh, look, kinkles.
I can't see my shoes. My shoes. These were my regular shoes. Yeah. And it's like all my flats were tight now. And I'm like, that's different. But
yeah. My feet grew a size and a half too. So that was not fun. But I didn't have, my pregnancy was great. I had no complications, no issues, no anything. And now looking back, I know why, because I had an easy pregnancy because of what was coming and I didn't know. So
yeah. I remember you saying that.
Yep.
And so you said you were working and then you're pregnant. How did you manage your work-life balance during pregnancy?
Time blocking it. Okay. That's what I did. So I was also, on top of that, I was nannying for the Ned Rips at the same time. So I was nannying 2 boys at the same time while I was pregnant. And so I honestly would just set aside blocks of time to do certain things. So I would just say, like, I need to work for an hour in my office doing Pampered Chef things. I would put that in there. I knew I was nannying from these hours. I knew I was going to be really exhausted after that. So I'd give myself an hour to watch TV. And then I would say, okay, now let's get some work done. Then I'd have an hour of doing nothing. Then I do some more, housework or whatever it was. And so I would just set up blocks of time and I set it up in my phone. And I do that even now too, as a mom, like trying to balance everything. And so I just put it all in my phone in Google Calendar. And then Google would just say, hey, you got 10 minutes and then it's time to do this. And I'd be like, okay, cool. And, the same way that we do with kids, you have 10 more minutes at the park and then it's time to go. It was the same thing. You have 10 more minutes working on, relaxing, or 10 more minutes to fold laundry, and then it's on to the next task. So I just set aside blocks of time on how to do that. And that's literally what I did, because if it wasn't for that, I would have been long gone. So I just made sure that I was being a part, I describe it as wearing different hats. Like I had my nannying hat, I had my personal hat, I had my life hat, my wife hat, my business hat. And I was just making sure that I had enough of each time wearing each different hat in the day. So that's what I would do.
That's
so
good. I like that.
Yeah. And I do that now too, because you have to, having a 3-year-old, oh my gosh. Oh man.
So before we get into the pandemic of things, but how was your mental health prior to, in pregnancy and stuff like that? How did you manage your mental health?
I didn't really need to manage it, to be completely honest. I didn't really have, I think I didn't, well, it's kind of, let me back up and say it this way. I'm a people person. So I need to be with people. I need to be around, people and be social and go to church and have lunch and see friends and you know, be social and like go garage sailing and see my best friend. And I need to, that's what makes me feel happy. That's what fills my cup. That's what, I mean, you know me, that's me, is seeing people. That's me. And so because I could do that so much when I was feeling sad or feeling upset or feeling anything, I would call my best friend. I would go out to lunch. I was, you know, early, or sometimes I would attend 2 church services just to hear the music longer. You know what I mean? So I didn't really need to pay much attention to it because the thing that helped fix it, I had easy access to. You know what I mean? And then when the pandemic hit, that was taken away from me. Then I had to pay attention to it. And so that was the hard part, is realizing that I didn't know that was what was helping me feel better until it was taken away from me. Kind of like you didn't know what you had until it was gone thing. Right. And I mean, granted, I knew what I had. I just didn't put it together that my mental health was okay because I had all of those people. And then once all of those people were gone, then I realized, oh, that's what helps me with my mental health. And that's kind of, so it was kind of pieced together backwards for me in a sense, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. And it's not that I was ignorant of it or, you know, say that it was it was unimportant. It's just, I wasn't in a space where I needed to give it an over amount of attention, you know, because I had my people. I was okay. I was social. I was okay, you know, so I didn't really need to give it a lot of thought, to be honest. So.
No, that's true. I see a comment here. So Salon said, I had no morning sickness at all for both my kids. I was also feeling fatigue as well. At the time for delivery was the most painful time. I also had swollen feet as well. So it's kind of like you.
Yeah, too. Like my feet grew so much. I was so sad when I had to throw my boots away because they didn't fit around my calves anymore. I was like, no. It's like, dang it.
Yeah, so you are not alone. There are like several people. Like Tiara was pregnant during my time, and she was the same too, whereby she's like, I didn't have any like crazy morning sickness, or she's like, I didn't have many symptoms at all. And I'm just like, I'm so happy that it's like I was on the struggle bus.
Well, and I think, and because I mean, you had a much easier C-section than I did, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just, I mean, it's just
God. Look at it, God.
Like God's got it. Who knew? What a concept. Who knew?
Oh my gosh. So like, speaking of now, like the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
What was it like? Let's just even get to the soft spots of things. What was it like navigating through your doctor's appointment? What was it, the last 2 or 3 weeks or so of your pregnancy?
Yeah, because my son was born the 31st of March, 2020. I think it was like the 11th or 12th or something.
That's when the restrictions and stuff started
and so happening. I think that's when my husband was not allowed to go on doctor's appointments with me anymore. And then I think a few days after, like a week after that, is when I found out I couldn't have my mom in the room. And then the week after that, I think, is when all craziness broke loose. So when my husband wasn't allowed to come into the room anymore, I was just kind of sad. Like I was just bummed for him to miss that, you know. It kind of was crazy. Like it was like it doesn't make sense, because if I'm literally pregnant with his kid, obviously whatever he has, I have. Kind of.
You live in the same house.
Like literally, I kissed him goodbye getting out of the car to walk into the doctor's office, you know? Right. So that part I think was sad. But again, my people. So that's what I didn't like, is I do not like to be alone. And so that was really hard that way. And then finding out that my mom couldn't be in the room, that's when I kind of, for lack of a better word, really kind of started to spiral, because I really wanted my mom.
It's
like I really wanted my mom, you know? And so that was really hard. And that's kind of where then everything kind of, I mean, yes, I got my son. I tell him all the time. I mean, you've heard me tell him all the time, he is my favorite answered prayer, but that's kind of when everything started to go downhill is when when we couldn't do that. And then in the midst of all that, that's when renovations on church started too. And so then I couldn't go, then we weren't going to church because we were doing renovations. And so then, and at the same time, I should mention Christina, who you did an interview with before, her and I are best friends. And so her daughter was born 6 weeks before. So then at that point, then when COVID started happening, then I couldn't see my best friend anymore. Yeah. And so then it was like, you can't have your mom, you're not going to church. Oh, and by the way, you can't see your best friend anymore. And it was like, okay. And then it was the family I nannied for got COVID. So then I wasn't nannying anymore. So then I was just home all day by myself for like a week. And that's why I say things started to kind of spiral downhill after that. Cause then after that, then it was the closures and the masks and all that stuff happened after that. Yeah. So that was kind of the start of it. And I remember vividly, crying when my mom couldn't come in the room. That's kind of when I remember the emotion of it all kind of happened. Yeah. So describe well, first, did you have a birth plan? No, I did not. Okay. Because like I said, I went to school for human development and family studies. Like I studied birth for my living. Right. I know 99% of birth plans don't go according to plan. So I was like, and I asked my doctor, I was like, do I need to write a birth plan? And she goes, I mean, basically we just need to make sure that you and your husband are on the same page. So if something happens, we know what's happening. Advocate for you and stuff. Yeah. Right. And so my husband and I were like, this is both what we want. This is good. All right, we're good. And so I was like, I'm not writing a birth because I know myself and I was kind of the same way in college, like when I would have to do like communications class, if I, had to talk about 5 points, I would just have the 5 points written out. I wouldn't write out the whole sentence because then if I missed a word, I'd be like, oh, geez, I gotta start over again, Yeah. And so I was like, I just want to make sure these few things happen. However they come to be, I'm good. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that I had like a birth plan. It was more so just like, yes, we want the eye drops, wait to give him a bath kind of thing. Like that was more so what we had done. Was there anything like, so it was like the bath thing and eye drops and anything else? It was, so we wanted him to do the bath, or we wanted him to have the eye drops. We were gonna vaccinate him on everything. Is that the vitamin K? The vitamin K drops, yeah. Okay, that's what we were gonna do that. We were gonna the vitamin K drops. We were gonna vaccinate him, and then we wanted to wait to give him a bath because that white meconium stuff, it's really good for him. Right. And so we wanted to wait and give him a bath, and after that, I mean, nothing. Didn't really. The only other thing I really wanted was I wanted to make sure that they kept a piece of paper with his heartbeat on it so I could turn it into a necklace. So that was really the only thing because there wasn't anything else that we were doing or planning on or anything. So it wasn't, I was like, I don't need to write those 3 things down. I was like, it's fine. You know what I mean? The biggest thing is like, just don't give him a bath yet. Like wait a little bit, Yeah. And I remember you advising me that as well. Yeah. And I just kind of like, I think it was one of my prenatal doctor visits. I told my OB about that one and stuff like that, but plans went differently and they wiped it all off. Yep. I was like, but I'm like, you know what? He's here. Let's not get particular about things. Yep. But life happened. Life was life. Yep. So yeah. So tell me about how'd you labor? How'd you find out you were in labor? I didn't. I didn't. Share with us. I didn't really labor. Okay. Okay. So it was the 31st. And my due date was the 29th, I think, if I remember right. Okay. And so I was late and over. And so he's very comfy, baking a long time. So we went to the doctor, and it was just a routine checkup. And they did an ultrasound. Everything looked fine. But they said it kind of looks like there's no fluid in there, like amniotic fluid in there. So we just want to check and make sure that, it's all okay. And they were like, has your water broken? And I said, no, it's not broken anyways, which by the way, water breaking is nothing like you see in movies. Just like FYI, like if you have seen anything in the movies, erase it from your head. Erase it from your head. It's nothing like that. Like there's not some splash all over the floor. Like it's nothing like that. And there was almost no amniotic fluid in my uterus anymore. Like my water had broken. I had no idea.
So you were
no
probably
idea.
leaking.
And I had no idea.
Pregnancy.
Yeah.
I remember you warned me about that.
No idea. You did.
You told me
So
about that.
in a matter of 20 minutes, it went from we'll be home later for lunch to we're wheeling you up, you're having a baby. I was like, can I wait like 10 minutes so I can walk outside and see my parents at the hospital to hug them goodbye? No. So then it was gone.
So was your family already here in town?
My family was here because my parents are from Las Vegas. And so they were like, we can either quarantine at home or we can quarantine up here with you guys.
Good.
So because like I said, my mom works from home doing Pampered Chef as well. And then my dad at the time worked on the Las Vegas Strip in the casinos. Well, all the casinos were closed. So he was working remotely. Yeah. So they were like, we can work remotely in Vegas or we can work remotely 8 hours north and be there. So they were here probably for about a week before that happened. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they were here. And so then I called my mom and I said, I have no fluid. So they're taking me up right now. And they were like, can you wait? They were like, can you wait? Can you see us? And I was like, no, like they have to take me right now because they want to make sure no infection gets in. So then I called my husband and I said, grab the hospital bags, we're staying. So, and it was at that point, I remember, and I can feel crying already. It was at that point that I remember kind of the feeling of it's not going how I wished it would have. Like it was, the feeling, even though I had my husband, like I felt like sad that I couldn't see my mom and dad. I was really sad. So that was really hard. And then it went from instant like, oh, I'm pregnant with a baby to instant terrified because it was instant. Like, I don't know if infections got in. I don't know if I've been in labor and I don't know because my amniotic fluid is gone. Right. So it went very quickly from we'll be home for lunch to now I'm starting to be scared. So it was pretty fast. So yeah. So then I did not, thank you. Yeah. We like brought tissues because I'm a crier. And so they checked me and I was at a 1. And they said, okay, well, we want to induce labor, obviously, because your water's already broke. Yeah, we need to get him out. Yeah. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so they did, and I don't even remember what it is, but the little pill that they like put in you, I don't even remember what it's called. I can't even remember. It wasn't like a drip. It wasn't Pitocin.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
No. It was a pill that they actually put in your uterus and in your cervix to like help with contractions and labor starting. Okay. And I went in about 5 hours, went from a 1 to a 1.5. So they were like, well, that's not working. And I was like, no kidding. So they took it out. And then once they took the pill out, then I felt contractions, but I wasn't feeling them. I wasn't like feeling them in a way that I was like, this is really intense. It was just kind of a like, okay, I can tell that that's a contraction. But I wasn't progressing ahead. I wasn't dilating anymore. So I didn't really know I was in labor. Yeah. Did
they give you an IV? Because I know like for me, because my water broke at home, but I didn't go to the hospital until like 7 hours later. So like I know as soon as because that for him not to get infected or something, they had to give me like some kind of vitamins. What do they call them?
I don't even remember.
I forgot what it was, but he had to give me something just to avoid infections and stuff. Did they have any kind of IV running?
They had an IV. Yeah. Okay. I had an IV. Honestly, after the memory of being sad, like, and this sounds so cheesy, but I remember them wheeling me away from the hospital entrance doors, and everything after that, I remember because there's pictures. Like I literally was so sad that I couldn't see my parents and all of the events that happened for Kason to get here. The next time I really remember stuff was when I was in the OR on the table having a C-section. and then meeting Kason for the first time. Like the hours in between that are so fuzzy. They're so fuzzy. I hardly remember them at all. So I could have had, I honestly do not even remember. I really don't even remember.
And so in those moments, because I think that's a really key thing that you just brought up of like, you kind of went blank and I can relate to that. Like, was it helpful? First of all, did you guys do birthing classes? Yeah. Okay. And did you do it like in person or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were fortunate whereby
we had them in person.
Yeah. Okay. And were they helpful for you and Kyle?
They were more helpful for Kyle than for me. I mean, like I said,
because your background.
Because my background, I mean, like I was the person in class that like, watched the birth video and everybody else in the back is like, oh God, that's gross. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a baby. Like, oh, it's a baby. Like I was in the front row. I was like, well, so Christina, and I don't know if she's going to want me to tell you this, but I'm going to anyways. Christina's, I think her mom, like filmed her birth. And then she was like, do you want to see it? I was like, yes. I was like, I so want to see it. Like, because to me, like I had asked my doctors beforehand, like before all this happened, like, can I have a mirror? Can I watch? Like, because I wanted to see but again, for me, this is I'm a mom, but I'm also,
that's your background.
That's my degree kicking in, wanting to be like, this is so cool. I want to see, sense. Like, you know what I mean? So I loved it. Like, I loved it. I wanted to, like, I think it's the best thing. So yeah, if I didn't have to do like chemistry and math, I would have been a labor and delivery nurse. In a heartbeat.
And you would have been great at it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, because I love babies, and so it made me excited. So I wanted to not miss a single moment of my own baby. You know, like we said earlier, like I didn't want to give him back anymore. I wanted to not miss a single thing of Kason being here.
And so walk us. I know you said things are kind of blurry, but like, what led to you having a C-section?
So,
because that wasn't the plan, right? I rarely think women go in like, I want to have a C-section. I did it.
Yeah. So, for me, it was not the plan. So what happened was, so they took that pill or whatever out, and I went from 1 to 1.5, and then I think I got as far as like a 2 dilated. And they noticed that every single time that I was having contractions, Kason's heart rate was dropping, and I mean dropping to like 60, 50, like bad dropping. And so the doctor said, we're going to give it an hour, see if you progress at all. If not, it makes me nervous that if he can't handle contractions when you're at a 2, how is he going to handle contractions when you're further? Like, it makes me, like, if he was dipping to, and I mean, his heart rate was like 160 the whole pregnancy. So for him to dip that low, it was scary. Like, if he was 160 and then dipping to like 140, she, was like, that's different. That's not that big of a deal. I wouldn't be so worried. But I mean, he's dipping from 160 to 60. That's a huge dip. And it was every time I was having a contraction. And so they waited until 7 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock came. I wasn't dilated anymore. And so that's when they said that we needed to do a C-section. And I could tell that my doctor was not calm, and it was the woman. She was talking to me, and I could tell she was not calm. Like, I could tell she was worried. I could tell something was wrong, that she had underlying concerns. I mean, I could kind of tell. And so she said, look, I know this wasn't the plan. I know this wasn't what you wanted, but I'm worried for him, and I want to do a C-section to get him out. And I said, okay. And so they give you a paper to sign. That is, if you are paralyzed, die.
I hated that paper.
Paralyzed, die, have any repercussions, anything, you're not going to sue the doctor or the hospital. And I'm like, I was so in a state of overwhelm. And this is where the emotions are really going to fly, just so you know. I was so in a state of just sad. Like, I was just sad in combination, of course, like worried for my son. and then sad my mom's not there, angry that this is happening, and a whole other side note of angry of like, I've been wanting this for forever, and this is the horrible experience, you know, that I'm getting. Like I've been waiting years, and this is the experience I get. And I was just mad. I still, to be completely transparent, I still am still mad at God for that. I'm in therapy now, working through it, but it is hard. And so I was just angry. I was just angry that this was the card that I was getting dealt. I was angry that this is what was happening. And so I was so in a state of not being able to even read and process. So I handed it to Kyle and I was like, you have to read this. You got to tell me if this is even like, if I should sign this or not. Cause I can't even. And he was like, yeah, sign it. So then I signed it and I handed it back. And then it did turn into a movie scene. Then it was like all hands on deck. And it went from my husband, the nurse, and the doctor and me to the hospital to like
30 million people.
Like a million people coming
That's
in.
how I felt.
I was like,
where did
hi.
that come from? I thought I was the only one on the floor.
So then it came into, and then somebody was putting a catheter in me. Somebody was putting socks on. My husband was whisked away to be dressed in the gown. The anesthesiologist, that's a whole other thing. The anesthesiologist was there running through things with me. My doctors were there. My nurses were there talking to me. I was getting my IV switched up. All this kind of, it was just a whirlwind. And yeah. So then we had to, the anesthesiologist that we got was on call. And you could tell that my traumatic birth was just a complete inconvenience for him. Like he was so annoyed that we had to call. Our hospital got a 2-page letter about the anesthesiologist. I was so mad.
They get paid a crap ton of money.
That's what my sister-in-law is literally going to school for right now, is to be an anesthesiologist. I was livid. Yeah, like I said, the hospital got a 2-page letter. Good. I was really mad. But at the time, our neighbor was the other anesthesiologist. So I was really hoping it was him. It was not him. I was really mad. But anyway, so then I walked into the OR and got up on the table and they gave me the shot and I was so happy. My neighbor down the street, she was the nurse that was like holding my arms and talking to me. And so it was almost Easter. And so we were talking, she was like, so what presents are you going to give us all for Easter? And blah, blah, blah. Like she was trying to distract me. And I do not know how Kyle did not hear me. But I screamed so loud with that needle. I did not do well with needles. I don't like them. Like I have tattoos. I almost passed out. Like I do not do well with needles. And so they gave me the shot and then I laid down and
so you weren't held or anything?
I
you're talking about the epidural, right?
Yeah, but it was the epidural. Yeah. It was like to numb me from like the boobs down, but yeah. So I was kind of held, but kind of not. Like I was leaning on her arms and she was holding me as I was like this. And then another nurse they were holding me so I wouldn't fall over. Like once I went numb, and then he did the needle. And so all of this with Kyle not in the room, by the way, they didn't bring Kyle in the room yet because the anesthesiologist said no. I want literally, if looks could kill, then anesthesiologist would have been dead. Yeah. I was so mad. And so then by the time I laid down, then they brought Kyle in and he looked and the anesthesiologist was looking at ESPN on his phone. Oh my God. Yeah. So I was mad. I was mad. And so I then felt like my son losing oxygen was an inconvenience for him on top of not having my mom, it being COVID, being a C-section, like all of this, like I was feeling so many emotions all at one time. And so then the fact that the doctors were kind of just talking and just not like, they weren't doing medical jargon. They were just talking about stuff no. The fact that they were just talking, I remember them talking about their weekend plans. That made me feel better because I was like, if they're talking just medical stuff, it's serious enough. They need to like get in here ASAP. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so the fact that they weren't like they were like, oh yeah, and doing it made me feel like, you know what I mean? Like it was just a routine C-section kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So it made me feel less worried. The part when I got upset, which I know there's no reason to get upset, but I was upset. He was born and I have to back up because I remember laying on the table and looking at Kyle, and I don't remember anything after they laid me down really until he was born. Now I went in at 7 or I went in at 8, excuse me. And they cut me open at 8. Kason was born at 8:24. So for 20 minutes, I don't remember anything. And I literally only remember laying there, and Kyle was here and the anesthesiologist was here. That's why I was looking this way. And I was this way. And all I remember was saying over and over again, I'm so scared. Like that's all I was saying was, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. And I was scared for me. I was scared for how I was going to recover. I was scared because I didn't know anything about a C-section. I was scared because my baby was losing its heartbeat. I was scared because I had to do part of this part in the OR without him. I was just scared. I was flat out terrified. And yeah, that was really, really hard. And then 8:24, they said, he's here, happy birthday. And they didn't even get it all the way out. It was, he's here, happy birthday. The cord's around his neck. You need to take the baby. He's turning blue. We need to resuscitate him. Get him on oxygen now, and gone. So I didn't even get to see it. So now I don't have my mom. I don't have any help. I haven't seen my friends. I went in, thought I was going to be home. I'm cut open. My guts are in a bowl on the side of the table. This anesthesiologist doesn't give 2 craps about me. And my son's not breathing. Cords around his neck. He's turning blue. He needs to be resuscitated. And I remember I snapped out of my I'm so sad moment and looked at Kyle and I said, you need to go with him. And I knew if I wasn't harsh with Kyle, he wouldn't go. And I was like, you need to go with him. And
he was probably thinking, oh, they got it. They'll be fine.
Right. And I was like, I want to stay
Carter
with you.
Too. I was like, go full. Because I had the same cord wrapped around neck and body. He's purple and blue, Carter said. So I was like, go, please go with him.
Right. And the thing was, and they said, the thing was, if Kyle leaves, he can't come back in because he's not sterile. So they left. And I said, you need to go with him. And he was like, no, but honey, I said, Kyle, you need to go with him. And I like snapped, when you're like feeling the alcohol and then you like instantly become sober when somebody's in a situation. That's what happened. I went from like hysterical, feeling all my emotions mess to like dictator, like you have to go with him. Like, and in my head, I was like, someone needs to be with him that loves him. Someone needs to be with him that can vouch for him. He's so tiny and so small. He can't do anything. So you have to be with him to vouch for him. And so, so he went with him. They had to resuscitate him. And I laid on the table from 8:24 until about 9:15-ish when they sewed me back up together. No idea if my baby was alive or not. So that was really hard. That was really hard. It went from, I'm so scared, you have to go with him, to please God, please God, please God, please God, please. I must have said it 1,000 times, just over and over and over and over again. And so then they sewed me back up. The doctor took the sheet down and said, everything went fine. The doctor said, the baby's totally fine. He's totally okay. You went great. I think you're a great candidate for a VBAC. I think everything went as well as it possibly could have. And then she told me that the reason why he was having such stress was because he was tangled in his cord. And basically my placenta was hanging him. So basically every time he had a contraction and everything would squeeze, he was trying to move down, but he was hanging himself with the cord, which is why he never dropped. Right. And why he was so far from my cervix. And there was no she said, if you would have done a regular birth, he probably would have died.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, of course, it's what we needed to do, but it didn't make it any easier. So yeah. And then about 10 o'clock, then I got to meet him the first time. And yeah. And I remember distinctly, like, I remember it almost as much as I remember walking down the aisle to Kyle. Like, I remember once they like wheeled me into the room and everything, I remember seeing Kyle with a little rolly bassinet rolling him to me, and the smile on Kyle's face told me everything was okay. But I was still just like, give me my baby. Like, I just want to hold him. Like I know, like, he's dad and he's got it, but like, mom, give me the baby. Like, this is mine. I want it. Like, I don't want to have to give the baby back, and he's mine. And I don't want to give it back, so he's mine. So yeah, it was emotional and hard. And looking back now, I try really hard to think, you know, let's just call it what it is. What a horrible time to be born. Like, what a horrible time. But I keep trying to think in my head that for my son to need to be born during this time, God must have huge plans for him. Amen. Yeah. But that doesn't make it again any easier. And so it's hard. It was, yeah, it was hard, which is why when people say, when do you have another one? I'm like, do you know what I went through my first one? Are you nuts? So I'm like, we're going to wait a minute.
No, that's wise. It's crazy because I think I've heard so many women's stories, but I think yours is probably the most similar to mine because it's just like you saying the way I was born with a cord, and it's like just like hounding your husband, go in there,
go in the room.
Because I was like stuck because I didn't see my son until like after an hour, kind of like you said, it was like almost an hour before you saw it. And I don't even remember if he cried when he came out because he was like so quick. It was such an emergency.
No, we didn't.
Because like they're like, because like Carter said, they had to resuscitate him, and he was like, babe, I was so terrified.
Oh yeah.
It's like, because he's like, I was looking at a lifeless baby, and it's just like, oh my God, I can't go back in that next room and tell my wife we don't have a son. And he was like, he's like, I felt helpless. I was standing there. I couldn't do anything. I'm looking at a lifeless baby. And it was just like, he was like, it was very, very terrifying. But it's so funny. You said something about how they were just talking about like weekend plans. And Carter said like, when he was in the room, it was like the folks who were trying to resuscitate him and take care of him, they were talking about, I think, was it food or like their weekend plans or something? And he's like, that's when he realized like maybe everything's going to be okay because they weren't like freaking out. It's just like, yeah, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What are you going to have for dinner? What are you going to have for like, I guess, breakfast or lunch or something? And he's like, that's what made him feel like, okay, he's at peace. And so since Kyle had him for the first like hour and stuff, did Kyle get to do any like skin to skin with him? No,
Kyle didn't do anything because he knew I wanted to be first. Because he knew, and they were monitoring him too because he had a little bit of bruising on his neck, so they just wanted to make sure everything was okay. But no, he was very good husband and knew I wanted to be first and knew I wanted to be the first to hold him and to kiss him and to do everything.
So he held back all this.
Yeah, he did. But I mean, his main concern was making sure that I was okay. And he knew that me being okay was getting to see my baby. And so he was like, if I take longer to do skin to skin, and that's an extra 2 minutes that Nicole doesn't get to have the baby, that's going to make my wife not okay. And it's not about what I want. It's about what she wants. And so, and he, you know, it was probably about 45-ish minutes, I want to say. And 45 an hour. And he doesn't really ever talk about it. And I don't think he wants to, and I don't think he likes to. It was a really hard time for him because he felt like he was somewhere, like you said, how Carter felt like kind of helpless. And he said it one time to me, and he said, sometimes I wish I would have stayed with you so I could have been with you and helped. And I'm like, honey, it's not like you could have grabbed a needle and started sewing. Like, it's not the same. I think it was hard for him because there was nothing that Kyle could do, no matter with me or with Kason. And so I think he just kind of And because Kyle was really good too, and he took pictures of Kason there, like when they were stamping his foot and cutting the cord and all, like the nurse took a picture of Kyle cutting the cord so I could see. But all of the pictures are like over the nurse's shoulder. Like you could see he was very much in the background, not doing anything. And I think he was just like in the mentality of, you know, most husbands are fixers. And so I think he just wanted to fix the situation. And the only thing he could do to fix the situation was get his baby to his wife as soon as possible. And if he held him, did skin to skin, anything like that, it was going to delay that from happening. And so I think that's why he held back, is because he knows that was going to be helpful for him, but he wasn't worried about him. He was worried about me.
Yeah.
So lovingly, I think he was just like, do whatever you need to do to get this baby in my wife's arms, because she is freaking out. And so let's just hurry this process up.
Yeah.
So
no,
I think
and that's good,
because
because with just so much that was going on, like all the inconsistencies and stuff, it was nice to have like that moment, at least for you. Like, I finally get to have this. So I definitely admire that about him. That's really, really good. And so describe like your first moment with your baby boy and also with Kyle.
I kind of don't remember.
Yeah.
I was so out of it. All I remember was wanting to breastfeed because in my head, and now looking back on this, I know that that's not the case, but in my head in the moment, everything had failed. Because, you know, I had failed to give birth. I had failed, which I know is not true now. Like, I'm confident in that. I did give birth, just not in the traditional way, but that's okay. I met my husband at 19. That's not traditional either. So it's just, it's different, but it doesn't make it wrong or a failure. And I know that now, but looking back, that's the mentality I was in. And so I was like, please just let me breastfeed. Like, that's all I wanted to do. And so